This is Mark. He just got the worst phone call of his life. But guess what? He hangs up, sets the phone down. No tears. No shaking hands. Nothing. 5 minutes later, Mark is making coffee. Calm. Like the call never happened. You probably met someone like Mark. Maybe a friend, colleague, or it could even be you. Someone who can sit through the worst news of their life and never cry. And the reason why this happens has nothing to do with how much you or the person cares. It's something most people never figure out themselves until it's too late to ask why. So why do some people never cry? Think about this for a second. Crying is one of the most basic human responses there is. Babies do it within a few minutes of being born. It's wired into us before language, memory, before almost anything else. And yet some people go their entire adult lives without it happening. Not once. Not at funerals. Not during arguments. Not alone in their car at 2 a.m. The tears just don't come. And the reason they don't? It's not one thing. There are several layered explanations, each one more revealing than the last. And together they paint a picture of how a body can learn, sometimes against its own will, to keep a door locked that was never supposed to be locked in the first place. Layer 1, it was trained out of them. Starts with what sounds like a character trait, but is actually a learned behavior. Crying is automatic and seen as normal in infancy, but somewhere between childhood and adulthood, a lot of people get the message, directly or indirectly, that crying is not safe. Maybe it was a parent who said, "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." Maybe it was a household where tears were met with irritation instead of comfort. Or it could have even been a culture, a classroom, a friend group where crying got you mocked, dismissed, or punished. Children are extraordinarily good at pattern recognition, and if crying consistently produces a bad outcome, the brain does exactly what it's designed to do. It adapts. It suppresses the response that keeps causing problems. This isn't a conscious decision a 5-year-old makes. Nobody sits there and thinks, "I will now stop crying forever." It happens gradually, through repetition, the same way you'd stop touching a hot stove. The nervous system learns the association faster than the conscious mind ever notices it happening. By the time that child becomes an adult, the suppression isn't a choice anymore. It's automatic. It's just how their body works now. Layer 2. The body learned to shut the door before the feeling even arrives. This is where it gets stranger, and this is the part most people get wrong. A lot of people who don't cry aren't suppressing tears in the moment. The tears were never going to come in the first place because the emotional signal got intercepted long before it reached that stage. Psychologists have a term for a related, more extreme version of this: alexithymia, which literally means no words for emotion. People with high alexithymia don't lack feelings. Their bodies still register stress, sadness, fear, the same way anyone's does. But the difference with them is the connection between the raw physical sensation and the conscious recognition of what that sensation is. The signal gets sent, but it gets lost somewhere on the way to being understood as "I am sad" or "I am grieving." You don't need full alexithymia for a milder version of this to happen. Some people grew up so disconnected from their own emotional cues that by adulthood, they genuinely don't register sadness as sadness. It shows up instead as exhaustion, as irritability, as a tight chest they can't explain, as wanting to be alone for no apparent reason. The emotion is happening. It's just arriving in a disguise that never gets traced back to its source, so the tears that would normally follow recognition never get the signal to start. Layer 3. The freeze response took over instead. Here's something that gets left out of almost every conversation about crying. Crying is actually a fairly vulnerable, exposed thing to do. It happens when the nervous system feels safe enough to let its guard down. And for some people, especially people who grew up in chaotic, unpredictable, or threatening environments, their nervous system is now very familiar with that safe enough feeling. Answer this. When a threat shows up, what does your body actually do? Most of the time, it's one of few things: fight, flight, or freeze, right? Crying tends to live closer to the fight or flight side of the spectrum, a release valve after the danger passes. But people whose nervous systems were shaped by ongoing instability often default straight to freeze instead, even decades later, or in situations that aren't actually dangerous anymore. The body goes still, flat, controlled, because freezing was once the safest available option, and the nervous system never got the memo that the threat is gone. So when devastating news arrives, instead of the body cycling through to release, it locks into stillness. Calm on the outside isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the nervous system doing the only thing it knows how to do under pressure. Now, let's make something clear. Not crying isn't automatically a problem, and crying isn't automatically healthy either. Some people genuinely process grief and stress through other channels entirely. Could be through talking, quiet reflection, amongst others, and that's a completely valid nervous system doing its job well. The pattern worth paying attention to isn't the absence of tears. It's the presence of total disconnection. Someone who can name what they feel, talk about what they feel, and process it some other way is not the same as someone who has no idea what they're feeling at all, who feels foggy, numb, or far away from their own life. That second pattern, sustained over time, is the one worth a conversation with a therapist, not because crying is mandatory, but because the disconnection itself is the thing that causes problems down the line. So think back to that person on the phone, like Marv from earlier in this video, standing in their kitchen, calm, making coffee 5 minutes after hearing the worst news of his life. It looks like nothing is happening, but underneath, there's a body running an old, learned program, one built years ago to keep them safe, still running on autopilot long after it stopped being necessary. The tears aren't missing because the feeling is missing. They're missing because somewhere along the way, a door got closed, quietly, gradually for reasons that made sense at the time. It's not broken. It's not cold. It's just a door that learned to stay shut. And sometimes, the most important thing isn't learning how to cry again. It's learning how to notice if the feeling is there at all. If you saw yourself somewhere in this video, you're definitely not alone. A lot of people watching this right now are realizing the same thing about themselves, and that alone is worth something. Recognizing the pattern is always step one. Do you think not crying has protected you, or cost you something? Or are you someone that doesn't hold back tears? Tell me in the comments.